entropy, anicca, impermanence, gradual decay, as there is of this platform each and every time. Seems to be getting weaker and weaker. This is the nature of existence, isn't it? Questions and comments that I've received. I'd like to go through some of those today or now. One exclamation mark comment I had, cell phone, exclamation mark. Or no, a grumpy face, sad face, crying face. Because this is their cell phone in the video, of course. I think this is what it was attributed to, I wasn't sure. My reply was, well, it didn't ring, because it won't. It's not really connected to a SIM or a number where anyone can contact me. That's not the point. Long are the days are gone, I'm afraid, of typewriter, ribbon and airmail. This is how we used to communicate. And books, of course, didn't seem to be such a taboo thing. Although, yes, it was. When they brought about printing, it was very taboo. We had Luddites, people who would throw their sandals, their slippers, into the mechanics of the print works in order to sabotage them. This is where the word sabotage comes from. Sabo meaning some word, I don't know what language, it means shoe or something, and throwing it into the works of the printers to stop the machinery and advance of time. This ever-changing nature of existence and uncertainty continuing. So, well, yes, apologise for the presence of the phone. I do try to keep it out of the way, really. I don't use it much myself, but only for this purpose of how I see your comments on questions, which, as you will probably already appreciate by now, I'm not even very good at that. I tend to lose my way a little bit, like forgetting to check the time when I begin. I even forget that this is a clock as well as a phone. We forget these things are phones, don't we, I suppose, because we don't use them as such, maybe. Anyway, so please, I should continue. Hello and welcome. As precarious as it is, I'm back outside, as the weather's moderately fine. Quite a few little friends, termites, joining me here for this. I'll move on. Did I check the time properly? Yeah, 10:04. Okay. This is a problem with the light now. The philosophy of Christianity, this provokes a lot of back and forth conversation. You know, I'm not trying to convert anybody in Buddhism. We're not allowed to. And I respect all faiths. I'm ecumenical in that respect. I come from a Christian background. So I probably know as much about Christianity as I do Buddhism. I would go as far to say possibly even more, because although I'm a Buddhist monk, I'm from a Christian background and lived in a Christian environment, went to a Christian school, a Catholic school with Catholic monks for the majority of my life. I even spent 1 year training to be a priest in the in Christianity in the Church of England. Only part-time, but it was an interest of mine, and I took it very seriously and went into considerable depth of Bible study and learning. So as much as it may be tempting and considered evangelical to proselytize to me, you don't need to copy and paste the entire Bible and post it all over the place, because I have a copy of I don't have a copy of the Bible here. There is in my mother's loft, my official residential address in the UK, a Bible, 2 versions. I think I have the KJV, which is the King James Version, and I have the NIV, the New International Version of the Bible. And I have read them, Old Testament and New Testament, and I am very interested in the subject. So I'm very interested in your comments. I'm addressing this to Christians, evangelical Christians, who want to preach the Bible by way of, these days, talking of technology, it seems just copying and pasting millions of verses. Well, I can look them up, I can see them online on this very technology here itself. I can have access to every part of the Bible, every version in every language, as we can the Buddhist scriptures, the Buddhist suttas. You'll notice in my talks, I very rarely quote, in fact never quote exact Pali or verses from the Buddhist scriptures. Apart from the fact I don't know them that well to quote them by verse and number, I find it rather distracting from the Buddha's teachings, the truth of the nature of what the Buddha taught, when people just quote chapter and verse. We have this expression, he quoted chapter and verse. In English we have this expression anyway. To quote chapter and verse doesn't necessarily show an understanding of what is contained within that chapter and verse. It is just intellectual knowledge. Even if you can recite accurately chapter and verse, it doesn't mean you are practicing or understand what is contained therein. So I tend to avoid that, and I've just replied to a long back and forth, not even debate, but I'm not sure what the conversation is about, because it is just chapter and verse, Bible quote after Bible quote after Bible quote, when I merely replied to the question, as I'm about to reply now, a straightforward answer from my own understanding. I will not quote the Tripitaka, either the Vinaya, the Sutta Pitaka, or the Abhidharma, or any other aspects of the Pali Canon in my answers. I will just give you the benefit, if it is a benefit, or in fact I will share with you my own experience of using the Buddha's teachings, as I would have historically perhaps, and possibly in some cases still do, share with you my own experience of Christianity and what Jesus taught. I think this could actually go on to a talk about this rather than answering any questions and talking about your comments today, because it is an opportunity for me to try and explain that it isn't necessary in any religion, I don't think, to keep quoting. We have these Bibles, we have these Quran, we have the Tripitaka, we have the holy scriptures of all religions in book form as our reference manuals, as our instruction books, our guidebooks to life, and they're very important to our learning and our understanding. Like we have with a vehicle, a motor vehicle, a car, perhaps you may not have heard of this, but we used to have a thing called the Haynes manual, which was a manual basically of a particular model type of car. You could get it in any version of car, and it would give you the detailed instructions as how to completely take this whole vehicle, this car, to pieces and reassemble it. These days perhaps not, because they're made by robots and they're more technologically advanced, but in those days, right down to the spark plug and the distributor cap, how to dismantle the entire car into its component parts and reassemble it in order that you could fix it yourself. Now this is much like the holy scriptures of Buddhism, of Islamic faiths, of Judaism, of Christianity, of any religion. We have these instruction books like the Haynes manual in order to assemble and disassemble, to repair, to understand, to get to the root problem of things in our faith, in our understanding. And we have faith and understanding in those. But if we want to drive from A to B in this vehicle, we don't need the manual. We put it on the seat or in the little cupboard, or we leave it at home and we just concentrate on the driving from wherever we're leaving to wherever we are going. And this is the practice of our religions. This is what we do. And we can, in an ecumenical way, considering all faiths and accepting and being readily open to all people's different varying opinions and ideas on religion and religiosity, practice, prayer, worship, whatever it is you do, have understanding that we may all have different opinions and do things in different ways. And this is the only point of any dialogue that I do encourage here, interfaith dialogue, both within and as well as other Buddhists talking to me. But even within Buddhism itself, there are many different traditions and different variations on what we understand as Buddhism to be. Not only in different countries, but in even one country, in even one town, you will have different denominations, different schools, different sects of Buddhism. I mean, that brings me on to, I'll just answer that question, as we are dealing with some questions. The most recent question is, hi, I'm from Taiwan. Do you know Buddhism is very different in every country? How do you see each Buddhist sect? Well, there we go. Yes, I do know that, and having lived in different countries, both as a monk and as a lay person, where there has been Buddhism, I've experienced it, and I did a lot of research before I finally arrived at the conclusion that Theravada Buddhism was the simplest form of Buddhism for me and most appropriate for me to practice in this lifetime. So that is what I chose. But of course I do understand there are very many different kinds of Buddhism. However, the core teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, remain the same and are the same throughout Buddhism. And this is all we need to know to practice Sila, moral virtue, Samadhi, meditation, Panya, developing wisdom. So this is Buddhism. It doesn't matter whether you call it Mahayana, Theravada, Vajrayana, Tibetan, Zen, all of the other manner of different schools. If it isn't reflecting the teachings of the Buddha as in the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, then it isn't Buddhism. So if you want my opinion and my view, that is it. All Buddhism is acceptable. And as well as that and beyond that, all religions to me, if they're promoting being good, then they're good also. If people require a God to believe in, one God or many gods, that's okay. I'm not to say there isn't one God or there aren't many gods. I don't personally know. So I have no view on that subject as to whether there is a God, whether there is not a God, what happens after death. For sure, I do not know. I have my own ideas, but all I work by is my own experience, what I can see within through this practice of Buddhism itself. What I can experience within this lifetime, within this body, physical body, and this emotionally thinking mind, what I can see clearly in those combined together through the practice of meditation is what I take to be the truth of existence. And what I've arrived at in that truth of existence is this teaching of the Buddha, this understanding of anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and panya, and anatta, that is which this physical body, this thinking mind, is actually not within my scope of control. I cannot determine the length of time this body will live for, or even what will happen to it during its lifetime. What will work, what will not work, what will work well, what will not work well. Likewise, I cannot determine how this thinking mind will behave and react in the future. Currently, it's relatively stable in its ability to understand, to cognize, to make decisions, and for me to survive a comfortable life. But that's not to say one can be someone one day and in a very short space of time lose a lot of that mental capacity. We can take the example of Bruce Willis, whom a very famous, worldwide famous actor, whom is suffering from dementia at a relatively young age, and although is still the personality he is and still living, has a different capacity with respect to his thinking mind now, and that is a considerable difference, and something that we have no control over or determination of how that will be. So anatta, everything to do with this physical existence is out of our control. And you come to see this through this practice of meditation in its reality, through just the natural process of watching the breath. It's that simple. Each breath in itself is impermanent. So I'll just flip through these if I can do that. I think some of these ones with regards to Christianity out of the way. The philosophy of Christianity and that of Buddhism are basically different. Therefore, I think comparison between the two religions is incompatible. Well, yes, the philosophy is very different. That is absolutely correct. But I would not say they're incompatible. Why? Because, like I said, all religions, if they are promoting good, then they are compatible, because there is one aim: to live a life of goodness, being kind, being nice to each other, and living a peaceful life. So someone in one of these to and fro dialogues said, well, what is the meaning of good? And quoted what good means in the Bible, with very many verses to describe good. Well, to me, somebody who is refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and intoxicants is keeping the basic 5 precepts, moral precept. That is being good. Any digression of those is not good. So this is, in its whole, doing no harm, either to oneself or others, through all that we can do harm with, which is acts of body, speech and mind. So physical actions, things we say, or our intention, how we think, what we intend to do. If we hold all those aspects, those actions of body, speech and mind, within the refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking intoxicants, then we will be performing only acts that are, even if not overtly good, are doing no harm, so therefore are not bad. This, I don't see there is any God. If there are many gods, if there is one God, whatever, whomever, wherever they may be, I don't personally believe there is one of those gods that will banish that person whom is behaving in a good way, someone who perhaps has never met Christianity, has never seen or heard of the Bible. And I meet very many good people in different parts of the world who do not know anything about Christianity. Understandably, there are parts of the world that Christianity doesn't reach. Even in modern societies, in places here in India, you can talk to some people in places whom would not have even heard or know much about Jesus or Mary or Joseph or even the God we refer to in that context. But they're very good people, very kind, generous people, very morally virtuous people. And I don't believe there is any God that would banish those individuals to a so-called eternal hell. And I ask this of Christians in reply sometimes. And do I get an answer? Often not. It's another volume of Bible quotes. But the Lord said this in this verse, in this chapter, and this was said, and this was said. No. What is it you think? This is what I'm interested in this dialogue. Because we all have access these days with these frightfully disappointing devices to all of this information. So there is no need to keep exchanging it. If it's particularly in reference to an actual fact, then sometimes it is necessary to get a point across. But often really just filling out space with lots and lots and lots and lots of quotes is a very unnecessary way of trying to get your point across. So, sorry, let me say, the philosophy of Christianity and Buddhism are basically different. So I think they're very different, but I personally think they are still compatible. You can practice morality, sila, you can practice meditation, samadhi, and you can practice developing wholesome mind states and reducing unwholesome mind states, panya, as a Christian. Albeit, in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path, right view is understanding impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. It is also understanding the Noble Eightfold Path, and it does perhaps go a little bit away from the teachings of Christianity. So, of course, they are different philosophies, but they're not totally incompatible. Maybe in the other way round, if you take Christianity or take Buddhism trying to practice Christianity, then that is incompatible. That is difficult, because Buddhists don't believe in one God. They don't believe in one individual, Jesus Christ, the Messiah, whom sacrificed his life for all of our sins through his crucifixion and then subsequent resurrection. They don't have a belief system. But also, they don't necessarily, well, I personally don't reject anybody's beliefs, because I have no right or information or proof or knowledge to do so. I can only say, I don't know. And that is all I ever say, is I don't know. Because I do not know. All I can know is what I'm presented with as the truth through my own experience. So let's see if there's another one. Oh, there's another Christian one, so I'll just answer this. I am a Christian, but just recently I have been looking into Buddhism. I love and appreciate how peaceful the philosophy and way of life Buddhism endorses. But my question to you is, how can one be a Buddhist and still have a close relationship with Jesus? For example, if Buddhism were true, then by default Christianity would be false, and vice versa, since at the core of both belief systems they both teach fundamentally different truths. Yeah, so that's a good question, and much what I was just talking about. So where you say, for example, if Buddhism were true, then by default Christianity would be false, and vice versa. Since at the core of both belief systems, they both teach fundamentally different truths. Well, Buddhism is not a belief system, so therefore it doesn't contradict and is compatible with other belief systems. Because there is nothing to believe in Buddhism or disbelieve. Buddhism, the only truth is that there is suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and a path leading to the end of suffering. Essentially, just as suffering. Now, Christianity even agrees that the truth is there is suffering, and they believe that Jesus died for the sufferers' sinners, the sinners' suffering, or the sins of suffering, whomever, whatever the beliefs, it is a belief structure. So in that respect, you as a Christian could still practice meditation as taught in Buddhism. You can still keep the 5 precepts, which more or less I think are included within the 10 commandments of Christianity, albeit within the 10 commandments of Christianity there are some requirements which are perhaps, if you were a Buddhist, wouldn't be appropriate. However, as a Christian, don't affect your practice in addition to Buddhism. And therefore, with regards to your relationship with Jesus, what's the problem? I have a close relationship with Jesus, as is the teacher, as in the teacher, as I do the Buddha. But both of them were men, both of them are dead. So there's no actual relationship with them in respect of day-to-day talking to in terms of that context, but I respect them as my teachers, and I follow the teachings of the Buddha, and my relationship is with his legacy, which is the Sangha, or the Dharma, his teachings, and the Sangha, the monks and nuns, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, whom were ordained in his time and have been subsequently ordained in his lineage to this current modern day time, 2,560 odd years later. Similarly, you can still have, as I do, a relationship with that which is this Jesus, whom was born and taught for a relatively very short time, in fact, but whose teachings were so profound, are now the most well-known throughout the world. You can still have a relationship with those teachings and with the body, these religious organizations or faiths or people whom have continued those teachings to this modern day. So you can continue with both. Now, there may come a time when you might come to your own realizations. Now, this will not be through reading scriptures necessarily, through studying, through intellectual acquisition of knowledge. It will come about through practice. If you're a Christian, through maybe praying and worship, through being good, if I can use that word. I think we all know I mean good actions of body, speech and mind, doing no harm to yourself or others when I say good, rather than me having to keep repeating the precepts or the 10 Commandments. Just be good, kind and nice to each other. In that respect, you may find through that practice you will come to other realizations, but none of them can be detrimental to you being accepted in through the gates of heaven, or sending you into eternal damnation of hell by not perhaps accepting a particular doctrine or point of view, as long as you're being good. That is just my understanding and my, if I have any belief, that if there was a God, I'd be allowed in, I think. But if I'm not, I don't believe there is anything eternal, as in a hell or a heaven. So I don't contradict the idea. If I'm wrong, and that is the case, I'm strongly confident that if my acts of body, speech and mind are good, I do no harm to others or myself, then I'll get a ticket in to the good place and not be sent to the bad place. So there's I've forgotten it, it's something wager. Pascal's wager is the term. Pascal was a scientist whom invented penicillin, I think. Anyway, he's a very famous scientist rather than philosopher, I think, but he had this kind of wager. Well, you know, whether you believe in God or not, as long as you're good, as long as you don't say, I can't remember now exactly how Pascal's wagers go. If you Google Pascal's wager, you'll get that explanation very quickly. But basically what I'm saying, be good and you'll be allowed in regardless. But if you think, oh, there's no God, so I can just be really bad in this lifetime, then you're not going to get in any chance. You've not I don't know. You've burnt your bridges there, I'm afraid. So I'm fumbling around now, aren't I? Okay. I'm just going to, please bear with me, I'm just quickly flicking through to see if there's... So, the point I'm making is in regards to Christianity and Buddhism. And firstly, the reason I'm making the point is I get quite a lot of comments, only because the most popular video on this channel relates to that subject. So they keep coming up. And I don't mind repeating my answers because it's always the same. I have no desire to convert anybody to anything. And I have no desire to be converted from anything to anything. I'm quite content in my practice of moral virtue, meditation and developing wholesome mind states. And even in terms of Buddhism, there are folks whom try to get me to advance my understanding of even that religion itself and move into different areas. It comes about. For instance, I have a question here. Where's it gone? Do Buddhists accept Neo-Buddhism? The short answer is yes, because Neo-Buddhists, as my understanding, are Ambedkarites, so B.R. Ambedkar, whom was political activists back at the time of independence here in India. He went to qualify as a barrister in the UK, in London. He wrote the Indian Constitution as it is now, but he also produced the largest sort of movement towards Buddhism in India after Ashoka, really, the king after the Buddha's time, reintroduced it back all those millennia ago. He really did attract a lot of attention. But I do consider Ambedkarism and the Ambedkarite movement as more a political use of Buddhism, which it is, because it was a way around originally the caste system, in that the Buddha did not accept the Indian caste system. So those of the lower castes were able to renounce that caste idea that is enforced through Brahmanism in the Hindu religion, and therefore become free from those ties. Idealistically speaking, it doesn't really work that way. But I don't want to get into that political debate or argument, because it is of no interest to me, and I don't think is part of Buddhism. However, it doesn't mean Buddhists don't accept Neo-Buddhism, because Neo-Buddhists are practicing the 5 precepts. They are taught, they have more precepts, but that's aside. This is additional aspects. The core precepts of no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants are there. They understand the core teachings of the Buddha, the 4 Noble Truths, and they practice the Noble Eightfold Path. If that's the case, then that's Buddhism. And Buddhists don't reject anyone's philosophies or points of views, unless it is something that is causing harm, breaking those precepts, or doing harm to themselves or others. So, yeah, I mean, do we accept Neo-Buddhists? Yes, it's no problem at all. And then there was a quick question also that I think I've got time to answer. Do you advocate the practice of informal meditation? So yes, I mean, meditation is something we should be doing all of the time, not just when we're sitting on the floor or on our chair in samadhi. This is samadhi meditation. We should practice sati, mindfulness meditation, throughout our daily activities, watching the breath, where we get the opportunity to just center our minds back to the body and this current moment, this present moment in time. But most importantly, being careful throughout all of our daily activities to have awareness and attention. And this is what we call sati, mindfulness. So if you mean by informal meditation that, or just sitting wherever you want outside of a, say, organized meditation group, then indeed we should be doing that, and I would advocate that, as you use that word. I think that's an essential part of the practice. Each and every day you should sit for some time, at least for preferably a minimum of an hour every day, in samadhi, just sitting doing nothing, watching one single thing, a meditation object. So I'm not entirely sure exactly what you mean by informal meditation, but certainly any meditation, you should be doing it, and I would therefore, I would advocate it, yes. Okay. I think that probably is sufficient today, because the talk's been overtaken by, probably because I've just replied to this long string of, again, gone into those, whatever it is on the end of the comments, when sometimes they come back at you and they go bum, 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 and don't seem to stop. And that is usually as a result of this opening up of the Bible and copying and pasting its entire contents. So I'm very familiar with the Bible and its structure, and the variances within it are cause for debate in itself. We could have a whole channel just talking about the difference between Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, for instance, and their depiction of Jesus' life, not to mention the other books that then come into force. Oh, another one I've just had comment was with regards to prayer and praying to Mary. I assume they mean the Virgin Mary, Mother of God, of whom I did pray to, not necessarily with humility and sincerity, but as a rote thing one had to do in school. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Every lesson, before and after, as well as the Lord's Prayer. So it didn't really do so much for me. It required belief, and this is what moved me away from Christianity in the first place. And then they also referred to the book of Revelations being so wonderful in that it's depicting now how we are all being punished for our sins, which to me is contradictory, considering we're supposed to have been saved of those sins, but we're being punished with them by this planet, this world of us, all of these disasters as predicted in the book of Revelations coming true. However, it is a known fact, it is no revelation that this world, this planet, even this universe is impermanent. That is now known scientifically in this modern day and age. This planet is deteriorating through anicca, entropy, as is this platform I'm sitting on as we began this talk. It's rotting, it's falling to bits, as so is this planet. This is no revelation. You don't need a book written 2,000 years ago. In fact, the Buddha, 2,566 years ago, told us that not only is this planet impermanent, or everything that is conditioned is impermanent, that this whole universe is impermanent. He told us that. He told us that prior to this universe were big bangs and universes, and then implosions and whatever you call it, into black holes. And this will go on indefinitely. Contraction and expansion. He predicted, he talked of this 2,566 years ago, before scientists actually proved it, as they have done in modern day studies, by being able to photograph light different changes way out there in space. So you'll all know more about this than me, being avid YouTube watchers. But myself, I know very little about this other than what the Buddha said and what I've read in Revelations, that book. So thank you for the suggestion, but I've given up the praying to Mary. Maybe it comes out as a little mantra sometimes, or maybe an expletive on occasions if I stub my toe, but not so much these days. With developing equanimity, that's not necessarily the case. So but in terms of reading the book of Revelations again, I think it's for me not necessary. I can understand what it's saying is certainly the case. The reasoning behind it, I don't think, is anything to do other than the very physical nature of all elements in the universe, which we are. We are part of this universe. We are made of its same constituent parts, all deteriorating in accordance with the Dharma, or if you want to call it, nature. So, I hope there's something of use in there. I hope I've not been provocative. I sincerely hope I've not offended anybody's views. This is definitely not ever my intention. It is to exercise useful dialogue in some respects, hopefully in part from my experience, some useful either techniques or ideas that you can try for yourself, see for yourself and experience for yourself, or leave aside, leave alone and not let it trouble you. But if it's useful, please share it, and thank you for watching. Goodbye. I'm covered in creatures. They're starting to even go in my mouth now. So I'm going to move before I'm eaten alive by termites. It's a good job I haven't got a wooden leg.